am Vanessa Thomas with the 12 o'clock news on the Street 919 FM, sponsored by the Sea Champions. In the headlines, daycare and preschool owners plead with the Prime Minister to allow them to reopen. Supermarkets welcome 10 p.m. closing time. NACTA poll shows widespread dissatisfaction with MPs. And internationally, millions of children in France go back to school today. And now the news in detail. As more businesses begin to reopen and many return to work, daycare and preschool workers are pleading with the Prime Minister to reconsider the decision for their workplaces to reopen in September. They say they cannot survive without a source of income for such a long time. On June 3rd, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Roshan Parasram had said it was difficult for school children to practice physical distancing and so chose to have schools remain closed. However, daycare and preschool owners say a July 1st reopening would be ideal. They are asking for a chance and say they will follow rules and guidelines. They even suggest that government send health inspectors randomly to make sure they are following the rules. And the president of the Supermarket Association, Rajiv Dipti, says he welcomes the country's new 10 p.m. closing time as lockdown measures continue to be relaxed. Supermarkets were previously allowed to open until 6 p.m., but with the economy being reopened, the Prime Minister extended the time to 10 p.m. Dipti said the association had proposed 8 p.m. as the closing time to the Roadmap to Recovery team, so he is pleased with the decision. He had said since pharmacies and food establishments were allowed to open at 8 p.m., he believed the same should have been extended to supermarkets. In other news, the North American Caribbean Teachers Association's latest opinion poll has found widespread dissatisfaction with the level of representation of members of Parliament. The survey was conducted by Dr. Vishnu Bisram and revealed that constituents felt most MPs didn't deserve re-election because of virtual non-performance and were glad to see them go. The poll shows a large majority of the nation was pleased with the replacement of most incumbents who had largely failed to service their constituency. Voters also complained that they had not seen their MPs since 2015, saying most MPs were seen only at election time. Even during the current COVID-19 pandemic, many voters complained that they could hardly access their MPs or councillors for assistance. They, however, praised the few politicians who provided help in the form of hampers. Finally, on the international scene, millions of children in France went back to school today after being at home for more than 3 months. Pupils up to the age of 15 returned to schools as part of a gradual reopening. Schools were closed on March 16th, a day before France went into lockdown to contain the spread of the coronavirus. One parent told the BBC News Agency that she cried with joy when she was told her 2 children would be able to go back to school full-time. And that was the news at noon on the Street 919 FM, sponsored by the Sea Champion. As we go, recapping the headlines. Daycare and preschool owners plead with the Prime Minister to allow them to reopen. Supermarkets welcome 10 p.m. closing time. NACTA poll shows widespread dissatisfaction with MPs, and internationally, millions of children in France go back to school today. Stay tuned for sport news with Jason Shields at 1 p.m. My name is Vanessa Thomas. Do enjoy your afternoon.
Welcome to Info Update. In the headlines, Phase 5 of the reopening of the country begins today. Tobago receives first PCR machine and a new board appointed for Store Bay and Pigeon Point facilities.
Info Update. Informative,
insightful,
unfiltered.
The issues,
topics and conversations that affect you. This is the THA's Daily Info Update.
And now for the details. Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, announced further relaxation of COVID-19 restrictions. Dr. Rowley spoke at a media conference on Saturday, June 20th at the Anne Mitchell Gift Auditorium, Scarborough Library Facility in Tobago.
Today marks the beginning of Phase 5 of the reopening of the country, and Dr. Rowley stated that this is possible because of the numbers associated with the country's COVID-19 cases. He gave the details of how it will proceed.
Today, all establishments are restricted to the following hours daily, closing at 10 p.m. And those are restaurants, which will be allowed in-house dining, and bars would be allowed to be open. Cinemas and theaters, casinos and members clubs can open.
Prior to today, supermarkets and pharmacies were only allowed to open up to 6 p.m. and restaurants up to 8 p.m. Beaches and rivers are now open, as well as mall food courts. Dr. Rowley announced the return of team sports and gym operations, while educational institutions will be allowed to reopen to conduct preparatory work for upcoming examinations. All public servants are expected to return to work, and public transportation can return to full capacity.
Public transport, including the inter-island transport, will return to full service. The regulations as it relates to congregation in a public space will now move from 10 persons to 25 persons. Events such as funerals, weddings, christenings, or any such religious events will now be permitted without restraint, except that they must follow the guidelines that we have given for the places of worship.
As the country grapples with a new normal, the borders will remain closed. Citizens are advised to remain vigilant, exercise frequent hand washing or sanitization, practice social distancing, and always wear a mask in public areas. I'm Raina Allen for Info Update.
We move now to health as Tobago received its first polymerase chain reaction PCR machine. Secretary of Health, Wellness and Family Development, Councillor Tracy Davidson Celestine, made this announcement while addressing the nation at Saturday's media conference. PCR is a process that amplifies a small segment of DNA hundreds of thousands of times, creating enough of it for analysis. Test samples are treated with certain chemicals that allow RNA to be extracted. Tobago's healthcare service is now in possession of a PCR machine.
For the first time in Tobago history, Tobago has its own PCR machine. We had some challenges initially with obtaining the test kits. Those test kits have since been received. We are in the process now of validating the machine.
Councillor Davidson Celestine said the PCR machine can also test for other viral and infectious diseases. I'm Patricia Nicholson for Info Update. In our final story, THA Chief Secretary Honorable Ansel Dennis installed a new board of directors for the Pigeon Point Heritage Park and the Store Bay Beach facility. The instrument of appointment were presented at the head office of the Division of Tourism, Culture and Transportation. The facilities are two of Tobago's leading recreative attractions. The new board of directors will be responsible for their strategic direction and management. The newly appointed board consists of Godwin Adams as chairman, Kieran McDougall vice chairman, Cherish Trotman O'Neill, Delman Edwards, Jonathan Daniel, Jonica Romeo, and Kevin Phillips as members, and Rachel Gregoire as secretary of the board. Mr. Dennis thanked the directors for accepting the call to serve the people of Tobago and encouraged them to ensure that they provide the quality of leadership that is in sync with expectations. And that's it from all of us at the Department of Information. I'm Davia Chambers, and you've been listening to Info Update.
News from the street. News from the street. 919fm.com.
Advice to the youths of the nation, and I would like very much if they pay close attention.